This is Golden Years, a roadmap to navigate retirement with Mark Cordner, the podcast.
One of the bigger questions that we get is, when should I claim Social Security? There was an article recently on GoBankingRates.com about a guy named Robert who waited until he was 70 to file for Social Security, and now he regrets it. He said the bigger checks are nice, but it came at a cost that he didn't see coming. Robert put off bucket list trips, thinking that he's going to have more money later. But unfortunately, his wife passed away before they could enjoy it together. Here's more of what he says now. He says, I waited until 70 to claim Social Security because every expert out there in articles said that it was a smart move. He also says, if I could do it over, I would have claimed Social Security earlier and used those payments to make memories while we still could. Of course, this one here, healthcare and daily expenses went up faster than I planned for. And having those extra years of Social Security income, well, that would have helped. And lastly, the stress of second guessing every year, should I wait, should I claim, was more draining than I realized. There's a lesson here to be learned from Robert's experience. Mark, what is it and how can you help?
I'm so glad you brought this up. This is such a regular conversation that we have. What is mathematically ideal and what is practical, or what is best for you, are often two different things. You know, when we run the computer analyses for people, and we do that as a free service for folks, if people are trying to maximize their Social Security, the computer will often tell them, here's 100 different scenarios we can run for you, and almost always the computer comes back and says, you should wait till you're 70, just like this gentleman apparently heard from other so-called experts and all. I would say that a true expert is one who balances the mathematical reality with the practical considerations. And so I find that we run these reports, and even though the computer says at age 70 is the best time to claim, many people, in fact most, don't take that advice because we've talked through other things like you've described, family health situations. Is now your last window of opportunity to go make those memories while you're both healthy enough to climb that mountain or whatever the goal is in your retirement. Certainly if there's terminal issues like this poor gentleman experienced with his wife, there's different ways you can approach Social Security, but the practical considerations often outweigh the mathematical ones. And I would say a big one is Social Security is not inheritable for our children. So if you delay taking Social Security, then you have to spend your own assets in some form. And those are assets that when you die can no longer go to your children because they're gone. The Social Security never would have gone to the children. So sometimes it makes sense to take the Social Security earlier so that we can leave investable assets to our children or to those causes which are most important to us. So yes, a one-size-fits-all, wait till age 70 kind of advice I don't think is a good fit. I think we've got to look at each human being and their considerations, and we've got to customize it. Definitely we got to do the math for them, and we can do that for them quite much easier than they can do it for themselves. But then we'll also talk through the practical considerations, and then people can make whatever choice feels best to them.
Just to kind of remind our listeners here, this individual, he may have waited to claim because when you wait, isn't it like you get an extra 8% a year or something like that?
Yeah. As a general rule, every year that you wait, the benefit increases 8%, which means you're going to have a greater monthly payout the later in age you are when you claim. You have to claim by age 70, so that's the maximum payout. And because Social Security is currently only 85% of your Social Security benefit is taxable, this is actually ideal because it gives us greater amount of tax-free money, as it were. But again, we've got to integrate that with other sources of income. There's other considerations. But yes, as a mathematical rule, you'll get a larger payout the longer you delay. You'll get a smaller payout the earlier you claim. Mm-hmm. So you can claim as early as 62, but then you'll take a reduced payout for life. There's just a lot of considerations, though. Family circumstances, health situations. Certainly if someone's terminally ill, we want to claim, and you can do it retroactively 6 months even in that case. So there's definitely individual considerations that have to be discussed.
Yeah, and what about things like, all the rumors that Social Security is going to run out, or, you're not going to get as much as you would because, the bucket of money that is Social Security is just depleting. What are your thoughts there?
Well, it's a concern because, they say that within the next 5 to 10 years, benefits are going to have to be cut 25%. We just don't have the incoming taxes to cover that. There's no, big vault lockbox filled with money, as they say, that the benefits have to be funded by future taxpayers, namely our children and grandchildren. But I do take encouragement in two things. One is that when they talk about reducing benefit, it's typically for people that are currently under the age of 50, meaning if you're close to retirement, they're probably not going to reduce your benefits. They're probably going to reduce the next generations. But again, no guarantees on that. I also take heart, though, in history, and that is in 1983, we had a similar dilemma, and Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill came together for that great compromise that some of us are old enough to remember. And it was at that time when they delayed the payout of Social Security from age 65 gradually until age 67. And that's also when they introduced the taxation of a portion of your benefits. Social Security wasn't taxed previous to 1983, prior to that time. So there's definitely things we can do going forward to fix this. We can increase the full retirement age from 67 to 70, for example. Denmark is going through this conversation right now. It was just in the news the last few weeks. Denmark's pushing the age up to 70, wisely so, because Social Security, when it was originally designed, was only to pay out for 2 to 3 years. It wasn't designed to pay out for 2 to 3 decades. And so we have to just look at this a little more realistically and realize that we don't have as many workers supporting every retiree. Changes have to be made, and the problem, I believe, is relatively easy to fix if our politicians will have the willpower to do it. Current administration says they don't want to deal with it, and so the next generation is going to, or the next administration will have to. At some point, the math is going to force people to the table, like in 1983, and it'll probably be in the, few minutes before midnight when they grow a spine and do what needs to be done. So I have hope. I have hope that people will do the right thing. But yeah, there's a lot of anxiety here in the meantime for people, and that's unfortunate. It really should not be necessary.
Many of us, we agonize when we should retire. Is it today? Is it next month, next year? And I want you to meet Terry Mlotek. She's from Chicago. She commutes nearly 2 hours daily to work. Ooh. And listen, she's just over it.
I'm just tired. I'm just stinking tired. And there are days when I just wonder, how much more can I do? I mean, I'm not retirement age yet, so still got to crank it out. But man, there are days when I just go, can I do it now? Can I just call it a day? I don't know.
Can I just call it a day? I'm done with it. I'm over it. And listen, we've all had those days where you're frustrated at work, or maybe you're sitting in the commute and you go, God, this is terrible. Why am I doing this to myself? I know, Mark, a lot of folks may even come to you and go, look, I'm done. When's the soonest I can do this? I also know they come to you and go, Mark, I had a bad day yesterday. I blew up at the boss. I lost my job. I hope I can retire.
Yeah, I've experienced all of those things, and you can hear the tears in her voice almost. And honestly, it gets me right in the throat when I hear that, because there's a lot of people that are burnt out just by life and by work. And the problem is, we all know what we want to get away from when it comes to leaving work. The question is, where are we headed towards? And sometimes in cases like hers, it may mean taking a sabbatical. If we've saved sufficiently, we might be able to take 3 to 6 months off work, or maybe we can phase into a part-time capacity. Maybe it means taking on a different career that it may or may not pay as much, but it gives us the peace of mind. It reminds me of a conversation I had with a sister once. My sister once, it was always important to my family that we have a pool. My wife loves to swim, and we wanted our children to have those memories and be able to have friends over. And so we always invested in large pools, and we were the place where everyone came to host, when the kids were younger particularly. And I remember a sister once saying, how can you afford that? And I responded, it really is a question of priorities. She and her husband had, they would go to another state to watch football games and do things, and that was what they loved. But I said, it's really a question of priorities. Shortly after, they changed their priorities, and they had a pool put in for their kids. And I'm not saying right or wrong, but I'm using this as an analogy because really it's a question of priorities. People often don't need as much money as they think they do to survive. And so maybe the high-stress job isn't worth the stress. Maybe a transition is timely. And so if we're spending 120% of what we make, then we're not going to have the freedom to be able to adjust, and we then feel enslaved to maybe the 2-hour commute or whatever it may be. So I would encourage people to have just very real conversations with themselves and with their spouse as to what's important to me in life and how much is enough. There's a wonderful true story of a client of mine. She's a physician in Colorado, and she's a single woman, and she works pretty much part-time. She loves being outdoors, hiking and climbing and things like that. And when I first met her, I remember asking her, how is it that you've made this decision to not be in the rat race like so many physicians, who are living beyond their means? And she told me how, as an 18-year-old, she had traveled through South America, and she came to appreciate the people there who lived very happily with very little material wealth. And that influenced her for life. And her father referred her to me. I've complimented her father so many times, as well as her, that I just so admire that she figured out early in life how much is enough. That's the hardest question for most of us. And I think that question underscores what this, what was her name? Terry, I think you said. What this poor woman is experiencing is, what price am I willing to pay for the lifestyle that I have? Maybe we need to scale back. Maybe we need to think differently. Hopefully life is not about money. So those are candid conversations that we have with people. But, 48% of people retire earlier than expected for reasons beyond their control, such as healthcare problems and job loss. So we would say the earlier we start planning for those kind of burnout feelings or unexpected upheavals, the better off we'll be. So come visit with us. We can talk. We can help you build those guardrails in so that you're not enslaved to an unfortunate circumstance.
Yeah, it's really about basically finding out the price of your retirement, right? How much is enough? Do you even know how much you need? Have you thought about some big magic number and you're trying to reach that goal? And you might have that number, but when you sit down with Mark, you might go, no. You're good. You've done all the hard work. We don't need to go any further.
I had that conversation with my sister about the pool. I made the comment that I'm willing to work 2 or 3 years longer than my friends so that I could have these things during my children's younger years. I wasn't able to save as much because I was paying for the big, expensive pool. So again, it's trade-offs in life. Everyone's got to decide what's right for them, and an advisor can help you clarify that. We can be a sounding board for many of those stresses. But at the end of the day, we have to make choices, and sometimes those choices are hard.
And I tell you what, somebody that should have retired years ago for a million different reasons, one being, well, now he's 93, two being he's a gazillionaire. I'm talking about Warren Buffett. He has finally updated his will. The 93-year-old chairman and CEO of Berkshire Hathaway now plans to leave the remainder of his wealth to 2 new charitable trusts that will be overseen by his daughter and 2 sons. Now, when you hear a name like that, and when you hear that really the market value of Berkshire Hathaway is $1 trillion, it's really easy to go, all right, well, estate planning is only for the rich. But that's not the case, right, Mark?
Oh, absolutely not, because whatever you've accumulated in your life, you've traded your life energy to accumulate whatever it is you have, that is your wealth. And it doesn't have to be in the gazillions, as you say. It can be in the thousands or hundreds of thousands. Whatever it may be, it is our life that is being represented through those dollars. And I think that estate planning is really a wonderful service that we provide. We work in conjunction with attorneys. For example, we regularly have an attorney that speaks to our clients. We've just here in a couple of weeks, they're coming in for another seminar in the classroom we have here in the office, because we need to update things, and people have questions. I personally need to update my trust. I just had this conversation with my wife. I've got some different feelings now about how I want to leave whatever's left over when my wife and I are gone. And so I need to update the trust to change some of the ways that the kids will receive money. Sometimes that means putting some strings on money. Sometimes that means leaving more to some children and less to others. Equal is not always fair. I've got someone with developmental disabilities, so issues like that. Long-term care for special needs or considerations. There's all sorts of reasons why your average person needs to do estate planning to take care of the disposition of their assets. But there's also issues like health powers of attorney that have to be addressed. Who's going to provide care for me in the future? Who's going to make decisions when I can't articulate those preferences for myself? These things need to be documented, and attorneys will do the legal part. There's a lot of non-legal services which my firm provides to help people with this, and a big part of it's just getting people to have conversations. I'm a huge proponent of family meetings where we have these conversations well in advance of the stroke, because after the stroke we can't express what our preferences are. So if we haven't previously communicated that in writing or otherwise, then we're going to have some serious problems. So I always say, if you love your children, get your estate planning done. If you hate your children, don't do it, because you'll leave them a living hell. So just decide who you love, and
wow,
that's a good reason to do some planning.
Yeah, I mean, that interesting you just said, if you don't love them, just leave it the way it is, and they'll be in a living hell. Because that was my next question is, well, what about the people that say, I'm not putting an estate plan together, I'm not putting a will together, I've told so-and-so and so-and-so what I want done, and they're going to figure it out, or, let the kids fight over it. But it goes really past that, too. I mean, it's not just you're putting the burden on your children, your family. This also becomes a court issue.
Yeah, I would go so far as to say that's irresponsible and cruel. I think we owe it to the people we love and the people that we hope will help us during our final days to get our house in order, as it were, financially and otherwise. I mean, I read recently that one of the greatest gifts we can give our children is to get rid of our stuff. I moved my dad up to Utah after my mom died. He married a woman up there, and we moved up the largest U-Haul possible into the basement of that home. And I remember as I drove that U-Haul for him thinking, I love you, Dad, but the day's going to come when I'm the only child close enough to you geographically to deal with this. I'm going to have to empty that basement and that giant, all the contents of that U-Haul. Now, I very happily will take the books that no one else wants, but getting rid of our stuff is not just the physical stuff. It's also, there's emotional stuff and things that have to be communicated. That's, again, is why I'm a big, big proponent of the family meetings. It's hard to do, but it is absolutely cathartic. It is an emotional release for people after they've address these things that hang over most of us. And I recommend you using a professional. Don't try to wing this on your own, because you don't know what you don't know, and the consequences can be too catastrophic if they're done incorrectly. Most attorneys are going to do a living trust for $1,500 to $2,500 in that range, and that's chump change compared to what you will spend over decades in retirement. So yes, it's hard for all of us to write the check, but I say the sooner you get with a professional, an attorney, and I would say a financial advisor with them, they need to work hand in hand. The better off you'll be, the happier you'll be.
Investment advisory services offered through Golden Years Financial LLC, a registered investment advisory firm. Insurance is offered through Golden Years Insurance Services. These firms do not provide legal or tax advice. Consult your own legal and tax advisors before taking actions that may have tax implications. Investing in securities involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Insurance contracts principal protection is based on the claim-paying ability of the respective insurer. None of the information contained on this website shall constitute an offer to sell or solicit to buy a security or insurance product. The information and opinions contained on this site or requested from this site are provided by third parties believed to be reliable, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed. They are provided for informational purposes only and are not a solicitation to buy or sell any of the products mentioned. Any media logos and or trademarks contained herein are the property of their respective owners, and no endorsement by those owners of Mark Cordner, Golden Years Financial, or Golden Years Insurance is stated or implied.